I've been a nurse long enough to know when something isn't right. It was a Thursday evening in late September, the kind of night where the breeze carries just a hint of the coming cold, and the leaves start whispering their secrets. My son Jason and his wife Melissa had invited me over for dinner. It wasn't unusual. Ever since I sold my place and moved into the in-law suite above their garage, we tried to make the best of things. But there was something different about tonight. I just didn't know what yet. Melissa served a creamy mushroom soup for starters. She smiled wide when she placed the bowl in front of me. "Made it myself," she said. "Family recipe." I smiled back, but something in her eyes felt off, forced, tight. The first spoonful was warm and rich, maybe a bit too rich. The second had an odd aftertaste, faintly metallic, but not unpleasant. Just familiar, like the kind of thing you taste when you're recovering from surgery and they've slipped something mild into your IV to help you sleep. That's when the dizziness started. My vision blurred at the edges. The sound of Jason's voice across the table seemed farther away than it should have. My hands began to tremble slightly, and I clutched my spoon tighter to keep it from slipping. I know sedatives when I taste them. You don't work 40 years in ERs and nursing homes without learning to pick up on the signs. The taste, the way my limbs started to feel heavy, like I'd been swimming too long. It wasn't right. I forced a laugh and pushed the bowl away gently. "Delicious, sweetheart, but I think I'm full." Melissa frowned for half a second before recovering. "You barely touched it." "I had a late lunch," I lied. "Old stomach can't keep up these days." Jason didn't say much. He just kept eating, eyes glued to his bowl. That boy has always avoided conflict like it's contagious. I excused myself to the bathroom, gripping the stair rail tighter than I normally would. My knees buckled slightly, and I had to sit down halfway up the steps to catch my breath. Something was very wrong, and I was almost certain Melissa knew exactly what she'd put in that soup. I've given enough pills in my life to know how to fake taking one. After that dinner, I went upstairs to my suite, closed the door softly behind me, and sat on the edge of my bed. My fingers were still tingling. Whatever Melissa had slipped me, it wasn't enough to knock me out, but it was enough to slow me down. She came up about 15 minutes later, all sweet and smiles. She knocked lightly and peeked in. "Just wanted to make sure you were settling in, okay?" she said, holding a glass of water and 2 white tablets. "Thought these might help you sleep. You looked a little tired tonight." I took them from her with a polite nod. "Thanks, honey. That's thoughtful of you." She stood there a moment too long, watching, waiting. I lifted the pills to my mouth, sipped the water, and tilted my head back just enough to make it look convincing. Then I turned and pretended to fumble with the blanket, giving her the angle she needed to believe I'd swallowed. After she left, I slipped the pills under my mattress. I lay down in bed, fully clothed, heart beating just a little too fast. I closed my eyes and focused on my breathing. Shallow, steady, like someone drifting off. An hour passed. Maybe 2. The house was quiet except for the occasional creak of wood settling and the distant buzz of the old refrigerator downstairs. Then, around 1:15 a.m., I heard it. Whispers. Not the kind that come from a TV left on. This was close. Too close. Melissa's voice, soft but sharp, coming from the hallway just outside my room. I couldn't make out all the words, but I heard her say, She's not going to last much longer, I can tell. Then a man's voice, not Jason's. You sure she took it? Melissa again. She's out cold, trust me. I didn't recognize the man. His tone was low, confident, almost rehearsed. It wasn't a lover's voice, not quite. It was something colder, businesslike. My blood went ice cold. Whatever game she was playing, I wasn't asleep. And I wasn't going to be her next mistake. Morning light spilled across my bedroom floor, but I hadn't slept a second. I stayed still, barely breathing, until I heard Melissa's heels clicking down the stairs and out the front door. A few minutes later, the garage door groaned open and then shut again. She was gone. I waited another 5 minutes before I moved. My joints ached from the stiff position I'd held all night, but adrenaline overruled discomfort. I padded downstairs quietly, my socked feet silent on the hardwood. The kitchen was empty. A coffee cup sat half-drunk on the counter. Jason must have already left for work, too. His truck was always gone by 6:45. Then I saw it. Melissa's phone, sitting face up on the table. I froze. Every part of me screamed that this was dangerous, that it was crossing a line. But when someone tries to drug you into sleep and whispers about your fate while thinking you're unconscious, lines stop mattering. I picked up the phone, no passcode. Either she didn't expect to forget it, or she really was that careless. I opened her text messages. The most recent thread was with a number not saved under any name, just digits. The last message, sent late last night, stopped my breath cold. She's almost out of the picture. We'll have the house soon. Another text followed a few minutes later. I gave her the full dose. If she's not gone by next week, we'll need to try something else. Gone. Gone. They weren't just trying to make me sleep. They were planning something bigger, permanent. I scrolled further back, my hands trembling slightly. Weeks of back and forth messages, always in careful language. No names. Phrases like, we'll finally be free, and Jason will sign anything once it's just us. My stomach turned. It wasn't just greed, it was calculation. And Jason was either too blind or too cowardly to stop it. I put the phone down exactly where I found it, screen face up, the clock still glowing. And then I sat down at the kitchen table, calm as a Sunday preacher, and poured myself a cup of her coffee. Let her wonder what I knew. Let her keep thinking I was fading. Because I had just woken up. It's funny, the things that come back to you when you need them most. As I sat in that kitchen, Melissa's lies still glowing in the back of my mind like a red warning light, I found myself drifting back to the ICU, back to my early years. 1983, St. Luke's Hospital, night shift, cold fluorescent lights, aluminum medication trays, the hum of monitors, and the hush of whispered prayers. I wasn't just a nurse. I was the nurse. When a patient's vitals crashed, they called me. When something didn't look right on a chart, I was the one who caught it. And when a new med rolled out, I knew its side effects before half the doctors even read the pamphlet. Sedatives, they were second nature: lorazepam, diazepam, zolpidem. I could tell a 2 milligram dose from a 1 milligram just by how a patient's eyelids drooped. I used to teach younger nurses how to spot respiratory suppression from a hallway away. So whatever Melissa was trying to slip past me, please, my body had been telling me the answer since the first sip. She was using something common, over the counter enough to avoid suspicion, but strong enough to disorient someone my age. Probably crushed sleep aids mixed into the soup. Maybe even a little diphenhydramine on top of that. Hell, I could smell the bitterness under the mushrooms. I stood at the sink, staring into my reflection in the glass, and whispered to myself, "You picked the wrong woman." She thought age had dulled me, that maybe I wouldn't notice, that living above the garage made me slow, dependent, easy to erase. But I still remembered how to keep someone alive with one hand and document a death with the other. I remembered what fear looked like behind the eyes of someone trying to control a situation. And Melissa had it last night. She picked me. Me. And now I was going to find out who she was working with and what exactly they had planned. But first, I needed to pretend just a little longer. Let her think I was slipping. Because the moment she knew I was onto her, the game would change. I needed answers. And I knew exactly who to ask. Marcus Patel and I had worked side by side in the ICU for nearly 2 decades. He was a resident when I was a senior nurse. But over time, our friendship outlasted the hospital walls. He'd since opened a small private practice on the other side of town, one of those quiet storefront clinics tucked between a laundromat and an insurance agency. Most people saw it and thought nothing of it. But Marcus, he noticed everything. I didn't call ahead. I just showed up with a Tupperware container and a worn-out smile. He looked up from his paperwork when I walked in. Well, well, Linda Harrow, either you're sick or someone else is, and you don't trust the doctors. I gave him a tired grin. Both, actually. He ushered me into his back office, shut the door, and poured us both a cup of tea. I slid the container across his desk. Melissa made mushroom soup. I saved a sample. He raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Just popped open the lid, gave it a sniff, and frowned. There's definitely something in here, not just herbs. He took a small sample with a sterile swab, prepped a basic compound breakdown test. Nothing fancy, just a handheld analyzer he used for checking supplement interactions in older patients. After a few minutes, the readout pinged. Marcus leaned in, his brow furrowed. Zolpidem, he said, a low dose, but more than what you'd expect to find in anything homemade. And he tapped the screen. Hyoscine. That's odd. I blinked. Scopolamine? He nodded slowly. It's a mild anticholinergic, found in motion sickness meds, but at certain levels, especially with older adults, it can cause confusion, memory lapses, even short-term disorientation. She's trying to make me seem like I'm losing my mind, I muttered. Sleepy and forgetful, like I'm on the edge. Marcus gave me a long, serious look. Linda, this isn't just dangerous. It's calculated. She knows exactly what she's doing. I thought so, I said, standing up. I just needed someone to confirm I wasn't crazy. You're not, he replied, but she might be. I smiled thinly. Then it's time to turn the tables. As I stepped outside, the fall air felt colder than usual. But inside me, something was burning hot. If Melissa thought she could erase me with a smile and a few crushed pills, she was about to find out exactly what 40 years in medicine had taught me. And this time, I wasn't going to play nice. They think I'm sitting on a pile of assets, just waiting to hand it all over. What they don't know, what no one knows, is that I let go of that burden a long time ago. The house Jason grew up in, the one Melissa now dreams of redecorating and claiming as her own. It's not mine anymore, not legally, not in any way that matters. Last year, after a minor health scare, just a brief hospital stay and a false alarm, I had a realization. I didn't want my legacy tied up in petty fights or greedy hands. I didn't want my final act to be another probate case dragging through courtrooms, with family members clawing at one another over bricks and wood. So I signed it away to a nonprofit foundation, the Lydia Grant Trust for Women and Families. They help women escaping abuse, older women displaced by caretakers, forgotten grandmothers living out of cars, people like the women I cared for in my final years on the job. I transferred the deed quietly through an estate attorney in Vermont and tucked the paperwork away in a safety deposit box. As for Jason and Melissa, I let them keep believing whatever fantasy they needed. It wasn't my job to correct their assumptions. Melissa had been circling like a vulture for months, asking about repairs, just in case, wondering aloud if I'd ever consider downsizing. She'd even brought over a couple from her yoga class to casually walk through the house, as if she were rehearsing ownership. I'd smiled, nodded, played dumb, because if they were plotting something, I wanted them to feel confident. I wanted them sloppy. And now, with her drugging my food, whispering to strangers, and texting about having the house, she was writing checks on a home that didn't belong to me anymore. If she wanted to erase me for the property, she was going to be sorely disappointed. I wasn't just going to stop her. I was going to let her fall face first into her own illusion. Jason had been on a work trip for almost 3 weeks now. At least, that's what Melissa kept saying. She offered the same line every morning. He got pulled into some last-minute project. You know how his boss is. Or he might have to extend his stay. I'll keep you posted. But something about it never sat right. Jason was many things. Passive, overly trusting, quiet to a fault. But he wasn't the type to disappear for weeks without a word to me. Not even a text. So one afternoon, while Melissa was out getting her nails done, a ritual she kept religiously, even while planning whatever slow-motion murder she thought she was pulling off, I slipped into their office downstairs. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, but then I found it. A letter, folded in quarters, stuffed in the back of a drawer behind old mail. It was addressed to Mrs. Harrow, in case of questions. I opened it with trembling hands. It was from a therapist, Dr. Evan Greer, Downtown Wellness Center. On official letterhead. The note was brief, clinical, a copy of a discharge summary. Jason had been admitted 3 weeks ago for acute stress, anxiety, and a mental health evaluation. Voluntarily. One section was underlined in pencil. Patient reports high concern for personal safety and safety of others. Specifically, he fears that his wife is poisoning his mother, Linda Harrow, via food-based sedatives. My breath hitched. He tried to warn them. He told them what she was doing, that she was drugging me. But clearly, no one believed him. Or worse, Melissa got to someone before the concern ever saw daylight. It all made sense now. Jason's strange behavior before he vanished, the tension in his eyes, the way he'd fidget when Melissa entered a room. He wasn't absent because of work. He was hidden, pushed out of the way. And Melissa? She was alone in this house with me. Not because she had to be, but because she wanted to be. I folded the letter back up and slipped it into my cardigan pocket. Jason had tried to save me. Now it was my turn to return the favor. I learned a long time ago that the truth isn't what people say to your face. It's what they say when they think no one's listening. So I started listening. A few days after I found Jason's letter, I took a trip to the local hardware store and bought 3 mini audio recorders. They were no bigger than a lipstick tube, with motion-activated mics and 24-hour battery life. The kind of thing a paranoid husband might plant in a cheating spouse's car. Or, in my case, a nearly poisoned mother might tuck behind baseboards and inside coat closets. I placed one under the hall table near the front door, another behind a decorative vase in the kitchen, and the last carefully hidden in a dusty bookend on the shelf just outside Melissa and Jason's bedroom. Then I waited. 2 nights passed with nothing but the sound of dishes clinking, distant television, and Melissa muttering to herself about undercooked lentils. But on the third night, just past 1:30 a.m., I got what I needed. I downloaded the files to my laptop while Melissa was out for one of her late yoga sessions. The hallway mic picked it up first. The front door opened softly. Footsteps, then a man's voice, low and sharp. "Any changes?" "Melissa. She's still acting weak." "I think it's working. 2 more days, then we'll sedate her for good." I paused the playback, my finger hovering just above the trackpad, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Sedate her for good. They weren't trying to get me declared incompetent. They weren't trying to push me into a facility. This wasn't about long games or quiet exits. They were planning to erase me. Silently. Permanently. I pressed play again. The man spoke. "Make sure it looks like sleep. Peaceful. Nothing messy." Melissa gave a cold laugh. "I've been dosing her for weeks. Her system's already soft. She won't even wake up." I closed the laptop, hands shaking, not from fear, but from fury. They had no idea I'd heard everything. They had no idea I was still 10 steps ahead. And now I had proof. She always made it look like a gift. That morning, Melissa came into my suite, carrying a pale green box with gold ribbon. She held it like it was something sacred, smiling like a well-rehearsed commercial actress. "Look what I found at the farmer's market," she beamed. "Handmade, organic sleep tea. Lavender, chamomile, valerian, all natural. Thought it might help you relax." I took it with both hands, careful to keep my face neutral. The label was handwritten in calligraphy, almost charming. A tiny card inside read, "Sweet dreams, sunshine soul." I wanted to gag, but instead, I smiled. "So thoughtful of you, dear. I'll have some tonight." She nodded, pleased, and left the room. The second she was gone, I grabbed a sandwich bag, gloved up, and carefully poured half the contents into it. I resealed the original pouch, made sure the ribbon still looked perfect, and placed the bagged sample in my purse. By noon, I was at Marcus's clinic again. He didn't say a word when he saw me, just held the door open and pointed to his office. "This time," I said, placing the bag on his desk, "I want a full analysis." He ran the contents through his portable spectrometer and tapped through the results with practiced fingers. A few minutes later, he looked up, face pale. "Lorazepam," he said, "and not trace amounts. Enough to knock someone your age out cold within 30 minutes. With repeated use, it could impair memory, cause confusion, even respiratory issues." I nodded slowly, jaw clenched. Melissa wasn't even pretending anymore. She was escalating, making the poison prettier, dressing it up in bows and faux sincerity. But the core remained the same. Sedate, erase, disappear. I took the results, tucked them into my folder with the audio recordings, and the previous drug report and zipped it shut. Now I had chemical proof, all wrapped up in ribbon. She thought she was writing the final chapter of my life, but I was just finishing the prologue of hers. There's a point where defense turns into strategy, where survival becomes offense. I'd reached that point. They wanted me sedated, erased, conveniently gone. But the truth is, Melissa wasn't the only one who knew how to administer a sedative without leaving a mark. She may have learned from the internet. I learned from experience. So I decided, if she wanted to play this game, she could fall asleep to the rules she wrote, and I'd be the one turning the page. Back at Marcus's clinic, I asked for one more favor. I need a clean, controlled dose, I said. Enough to make her sleep hard, but not enough to harm. Marcus hesitated. Linda, what are you planning? I'm planning, I said calmly, to wake up from this nightmare. He sighed, but he knew me well enough not to argue. Within the hour, I had a pre-measured solution, a tasteless, odorless sleep aid that would act within 20 minutes and leave no long-term trace. Nothing dangerous, nothing cruel, just a pause. I waited for the right moment, and it came, that evening. Melissa waltzed in with her usual smug routine, dressed in overpriced workout gear, holding 2 glasses of hibiscus iced tea. Felt like treating us both tonight, she chirped. Oh no, I said with a soft laugh. Let me treat you for once. I motioned for her to sit while I poured fresh glasses from my own pitcher, the one I'd prepped earlier with Marcus's dose. She didn't suspect a thing. Why would she? In her mind, I was the one unraveling. We clinked glasses. She took several sips, chatted aimlessly about a new interior designer she wanted to hire. For when the house is finally ours, she whispered. I smiled and listened. 17 minutes later, her words began to slur. Her eyelid fluttered. She tried to stand, then sat again, too fast. Wow, I must be more tired than I thought, she mumbled. I helped her to the couch, covered her with the soft gray blanket she always used for herself. And then I whispered into her ear the same words I'd said to my reflection a week ago. You picked the wrong woman. She was asleep within seconds. Not gone, not hurt, just out of the way. Now it was my turn. There's an art to falling. Not the clumsy kind, but the kind that looks just believable enough to make someone panic. I waited until late afternoon, when Melissa was fully awake again, slightly groggy but brushing it off as exhaustion. She hadn't suspected a thing, thought she just had one too many sips of iced tea. Perfect. I set the stage. I left the dishwasher door open just a little, carried a mug in one hand, shuffled my feet down the hallway like I'd done 100 times before. Slow, fragile, confused. Then I let the mug slip from my hand and let my knees buckle hard onto the hardwood floor. The crash of the mug shattering was loud enough to bring Melissa running. Oh my God, Linda. She crouched beside me, her voice shrill and breathy. What happened? Are you okay? I blinked slowly, forcing my eyes half open. I don't know. I just felt lightheaded. I saw the flicker in her eyes. Not concern, calculation. She helped me to the couch, made a fake show of tucking a pillow under my neck, then left the room with her phone in hand. That was exactly what I needed. What she didn't know, what she never knew, was that the hallway mic was back in place. Fully charged, recording. From the other side of the wall, I heard her hiss into her phone. She went down again, this time hard. No, I'm telling you, she's slipping fast. We need to do it tomorrow morning. We have to. No more delays. A pause, then more urgency in her tone. I'll make her tea strong enough to keep her out all day. You just bring the paperwork. Jason's still locked up, and the doctors don't believe a word he says. It's now or never. My fingers clenched into fists beneath the blanket. Now or never. She had no idea how true that was. When she returned, I gave her a weak smile. Thank you, dear. Must have just been my blood sugar. She forced a chuckle. Maybe it's time to start thinking about the future. Long-term care. I nodded slowly. Yes, I said. It's time we start preparing. She smiled, satisfied. She had no idea what I was preparing her for. The morning light was soft and golden, one of those peaceful dawns that fools you into thinking nothing could go wrong. Perfect. I brewed the coffee just the way Melissa liked it. Extra cream, 2 sugars, and a sprinkle of cinnamon on top. She always claimed it made her feel cozy and powerful. The irony wasn't lost on me. While the pot bubbled, I opened the drawer where I kept the amber vial Marcus had prepared. The same harmless sleep aid she once tried to turn against me, now measured precisely, mixed gently into her cup, and stirred until invisible. She waltzed into the kitchen in silk pajamas, humming some pop tune like a woman without a care in the world. No makeup yet, but her lips curled into that trademark smirk the second she saw me. Well, someone's up early, she chirped. Did you sleep okay? Like a rock, I replied, handing her the mug. Thought I'd treat you this time. She raised her eyebrows, impressed. Look at you, turning over a new leaf. She took a long sip, closed her eyes. God, you make it better than I do. I smiled and sat across from her, sipping my own black coffee, untouched by anything but strength and purpose. We chatted for a while, about nothing as usual. She rambled about redecorating the guest room, about making the house brighter once the paperwork cleared. 20 minutes passed, then 25. And then it started. She blinked too slow, rubbed her temples, shifted in her seat like her limbs were getting heavier. Whew, she murmured. I think I need to lie down for a minute. She tried to stand, wobbled. I moved quickly but gently, catching her by the arm as her knees buckled. Her pupils were dilating, eyelids drooping like velvet curtains in slow motion. Linda, what did you? She whispered, confused, dazed. I leaned in close, holding her arm like a nurse would a tired patient. Sweet dreams, my dear daughter-in-law, I said softly. You just drank exactly what you've been feeding me for weeks. Her eyes widened for a split second, then closed. Her body went limp. I lowered her onto the couch, tucking a pillow behind her head like she had done for me not long ago. Only this time, it was real. Only this time, I was wide awake, and she was the one slipping away. There's a moment when silence settles and your enemy finally sleeps. That feels like standing in a vault of truth. Melissa was out cold on the couch, breathing slow and shallow, just like she had planned for me. And now it was time to open her safe. Not the kind made of steel and combination locks, but the kind we all carry around without thinking. A phone. I gently lifted her right hand and pressed her index finger to the screen. Unlocked. I took a breath, then dove in. First, the messages. The same number from before, the one I'd seen on the device she forgot at the kitchen table. But now I had full access. Weeks of back and forth texts with someone saved only as J. She's getting slower. Like you said, subtle works. Jason's breakdown helped more than I thought. I'll play the concerned wife if anyone asks. Poor Mill with memory issues. You're brilliant. I felt my pulse pound in my ears. Then I opened the voice memos. One was titled, Insurance Chat, Backup. I pressed play. Melissa's voice came through, syrupy and smug. Jason's not stable. He says things about me that aren't true. He's been hallucinating, paranoid. Honestly, I'm scared he might hurt someone. Lies, all of them, planted for doctors, maybe lawyers, maybe even for me, if I ever got too curious. Another memo. After she's gone, we'll file to reclaim the house. Jason's name is on nothing now. I opened her photo gallery next. Screenshots of Jason's discharge papers, edited with handwritten notes that read, mental instability, useful if needed. She'd weaponized his vulnerability, twisted his attempt to protect me into a narrative of madness. And now, I had everything. Text messages, recordings, fabricated medical claims, a documented effort to isolate, sedate, and discredit. The safe was open, and the woman who locked it thought I was too old to find the key. When you've lived long enough, you learn that justice isn't always about dialing 911. Sometimes it's about calling the right people, the ones who know how to move quietly, thoroughly, and without tipping off the enemy too soon. Melissa was still out cold on the couch, arms limp, lips slightly parted, the sleeping beauty, dreaming of an empire that was never hers to claim. I walked into my room, shut the door, and pulled out my burner phone, the one Marcus gave me when things first started to feel wrong. He answered on the second ring. "Tell me you didn't go through with it," he said, voice tight. "I did," I replied. "And it worked. She's out. I have everything. Her phone, the recordings, the drug test reports, even the falsified documents on Jason." There was a pause, then a long sigh of relief. "Okay," he said. "Now what?" "I need Grace," I said, and not in her Sunday family dinner mode. "I need the detective." Grace Hammond, my cousin, had worked 23 years in missing persons and elder abuse cases. She was sharp, discreet, and most importantly, she knew how to build a case before the system had a chance to mess it up. Within the hour, they were both in my kitchen. Marcus sat with his laptop open, organizing all the digital files I'd downloaded from Melissa's phone. Grace paced like a lioness, listening to the audio files, taking notes, occasionally letting out soft curses under her breath. "This is organized coercion," she muttered. "She created a narrative, isolated you, discredited Jason, and built the groundwork to make your death look natural. She's not just cruel, she's smart." "But not smarter than me," I said calmly. Grace nodded. "Good thing you didn't call the police yet. We need a clean packet, time-stamped files, chain of custody, clear motives. When we hand this over, we want everything to stick." Marcus added, "And no counterclaims. Melissa has nothing left to twist. Not now." I looked over at the living room. She was still sleeping, unaware that her castle was made of ash. They thought I was fading. But I was building a case, and now I had a team. I hadn't seen my son in 22 days. Not a call, not a message. Just silence, cold and orchestrated silence. But today, that changed. Grace had pulled some strings, and with the evidence I had in hand, Jason's doctor finally agreed he was of sound mind. The paranoia Melissa had blamed him for. Turns out, it was just truth she didn't want anyone to believe. At 10:07 a.m., I heard the gravel crunch beneath cautious footsteps outside the front door. Then came a soft knock. I opened it slowly. There he was, my boy, pale, thinner, wearing the same navy hoodie he left in. But his eyes, they weren't confused anymore. They were wide open. "Mom," he said, voice cracking. "They told me you were sick, that you weren't yourself." I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around him before he could say another word. I didn't cry often. I'd hardened myself against too much over the years. But this time, the tears came fast. Relief, rage, love. It all broke at once. "I'm so sorry," he whispered into my shoulder. I tried to warn them. I told them what she was doing. No one listened to me. I pulled back and held his face between my hands, like I used to when he was 5 and feverish. "You tried, Jason," I said gently. "You did everything you could. And now," I gestured toward the table, where Marcus and Grace sat surrounded by files, phones, reports, our quiet arsenal. "Now it's time to see things clearly." I led him inside and handed him Melissa's phone. "Read the messages. Play the recordings. Everything you feared was real." His fingers trembled as he scrolled. His face darkened with every word, every whispered plan to erase me, every lie she built using his name. He looked up at me, eyes brimming with horror and guilt. "She used me," he said. "She used both of us." I nodded. "But not anymore," I said. "Now we write the ending." The living room was silent, the kind of silence that hums beneath the surface, thick with things unsaid. Jason sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, head bowed. I placed the laptop on the coffee table in front of him and opened the folder labeled Melissa Evidence. He didn't speak, just nodded once. I clicked play. The first recording was from the hallway mic 2 nights before. 2 more days, then we'll sedate her for good. Jason's head snapped up. He blinked, hard, as if trying to shake something loose in his mind. The next clip was shorter. Melissa, speaking on the phone. Jason's breaking down. He's saying crazy things about me drugging his mom. "I told the doctor he's been slipping for months. They'll believe me. They always do." I saw it hit him. Not just the betrayal, but the pattern. The things she said behind closed doors were the same lines she fed into every crack of his self-worth. Lines he'd started to believe. We played the next clip, her voice again, this time calm and cold. "Once she's gone, I'll have him sign what's left. He won't even ask. Just keep him medicated enough to stay out of the way." Jason flinched. Grace, sitting in the corner, paused the playback. "That voice memo was timestamped a week before your intake," she said softly. "She told the facility you were delusional, that you were dangerous." Jason looked at me, jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. "She used my own breakdown against me," he said, voice hollow. "Made me doubt everything." I reached out and put a hand on his back. "No, sweetheart, she created that breakdown." He shook his head slowly. "Every time I questioned her, she'd say I needed to get help, that I was losing it, and I believed her. I thought I was protecting her from myself." "You were never the threat," I said quietly. "You were the cover story." The room stayed still. No one moved. Even the air seemed to wait. Jason's eyes filled with tears he didn't bother hiding this time. Not out of weakness, but because the fog had finally cleared. And what stood before him now wasn't madness. It was the truth. The morning smelled like toast and justice. I stood in the kitchen, calmly buttering a slice of sourdough as the clock ticked toward 8 a.m. Jason sat silently at the table, eyes still heavy from the weight of last night's truths. Marcus leaned against the fridge, arms crossed, expression unreadable. And across from us, sitting upright, alert, and deadly serious, was Detective Grace Hammond. Not just my cousin today, but the law. We heard her footsteps before we saw her. Melissa shuffled in, still in her silk robe, her hair a little tangled, eyelids blinking against the brightness of morning. She yawned dramatically. "Well, someone's up early," she mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot. And then she saw Jason. Her smile froze. Then she saw Marcus, and then the badge on Grace's belt. Her entire body stiffened. What's going on?" she asked, voice faltering, trying to shift into innocent mode, but the mask slipped fast. No one answered. She turned to me, as if I'd somehow be her ally in this room, and that's when I placed my hand softly on the kitchen table, palm flat, fingers steady. I looked her right in the eye and said, as calmly as if I were asking about the weather, "Did you sleep well, sweetheart?" She didn't answer, didn't have to. Grace stepped forward. "Melissa Harrow, you are under investigation for attempted elder abuse, coercion, and unlawful drug administration. You have the right to remain silent." "No, wait. This is a misunderstanding," Melissa stammered, stepping back. "She's confused. She's not well." Jason stood. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He simply said, "We listened to everything." Melissa's mouth opened, then closed. She looked to me again, but I offered her nothing. Not anymore. Grace finished reading her rights. The cuffs clicked gently, almost politely, around Melissa's wrists. And just like that, the poison left the house, in heels and handcuffs. The toast popped from the toaster. I sat down beside my son and passed him the butter. Courtrooms are strange places. So much tension packed into neat rows of pews and polished wood. Everyone dressed like they're pretending not to sweat. And yet, beneath the surface, grief, rage, betrayal, all coiled like snakes waiting to strike. I sat on the witness stand in a navy blue blazer that still carried the faint scent of cedar from the closet. I hadn't worn it since my retirement party. This time, I wore it to testify against the woman who tried to erase me. Melissa sat at the defense table, jaw tight, eyes flicking between her attorney and the floor. Gone was the soft voice, the perfect smile, the organic tea and satin robes. In their place, paperwork, handcuffs, and silence. The prosecutor stood, tall and unwavering. "This," she began, "is a case about trust and how it was shattered." She turned toward the jury, gesturing to me. "Linda Harrow is a 68-year-old retired nurse, a woman who dedicated her life to caregiving and found herself the victim of the very cruelty she had spent decades protecting others from. This is elder abuse, calculated, cold, and criminal." I kept my hands folded in my lap. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't give speeches. I didn't dramatize. I told the truth. How Melissa began isolating me. How she fed me sedatives in soup, in tea, in smiles. How she manipulated Jason's mental health to silence him. How she tried to take not just a house, but a legacy. I watched the jurors shift in their seats. Not with boredom, but discomfort. They believed me. Because it was believable. Because it happens to people like me more than anyone wants to admit. Grace sat in the front row, flanked by Marcus and Jason. My son kept his gaze fixed on Melissa, his expression unreadable but firm. Then came the recordings, the texts, the lab results, the phone logs, her voice saying, "We'll sedate her for good." Each piece fell like a hammer, building a wall of truth around her lies. Her defense lawyer tried to paint her as concerned, overwhelmed, misunderstood. But the evidence didn't flinch, and neither did I. When the judge adjourned for the day, I stepped down from the stand with slow but steady steps. It wasn't over yet, but it had begun, and this time I wasn't the one being silenced. Some wounds don't bleed, they settle into the walls. After the trial began, Melissa was denied bail. The house, now free of her presence, felt unfamiliar, like it was exhaling for the first time in months. Jason stayed. At first, he moved quietly, unsure of his place, as if every corner still belonged to the ghost of guilt. He'd sit at the edge of the kitchen table, coffee untouched, eyes on the floor. One morning, I found him in the living room, holding a photo of him and me at his high school graduation. His hands were shaking. "Mom," he said, voice rough, "I didn't protect you. I let her." I stopped him with a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You believed someone you loved. That's not weakness. That's being human." He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in a long while. His eyes were glassy, but no longer clouded. "I want to fix it," he whispered. "Not just say sorry. Do sorry." So we started with the house. Together, we peeled away the damage. Not just what Melissa had touched, but what she'd poisoned in spirit. We opened windows that hadn't been opened in months. We painted the living room a soft, warm color. Honey oat, I think it was called. Jason tore down the blackout curtains Melissa insisted on and replaced them with sheer white drapes that caught the morning light just right. We even converted her yoga room, that cold, curated space, into a library. There were nights, early on, where he'd check in on me, offer a cup of tea, pause at my door. "You good, Ma?" And I was. Because something had shifted. We no longer slept with the lights off out of fear. Now we chose the dark, because we knew the morning was coming. There were no more whispered plans through keyholes, only soft music from a record player, the sound of dishes being washed, laughter sometimes. The house wasn't haunted anymore. It was healing. And so were we. I sat by the window this morning, warm tea in hand, the house breathing gently around me, wood floors creaking with age, not tension. It was quiet, but not the kind of silence that follows fear, the kind that follows truth. I opened my old leather-bound journal, the one I hadn't touched since before Melissa came into our lives, the one I used to fill with patient stories, memories from the hospital, and lessons I didn't want to forget. And today, I wrote something new. They thought I was slipping. They thought I couldn't see what was happening around me. They fed me silence and sedatives and smiled through their cruelty. But I didn't sleep. Not once. I didn't blink. I didn't rest. I didn't look away. Because they forgot who I am. I am a woman who has held dying hands and woken sleeping hearts. I am a woman who has stitched flesh and comforted ghosts. I am a survivor, not by chance, but by training, by instinct, by fire. Melissa tried to end me, but what I ended was the lie. I ended the myth that aging means fading, that quiet means weak, that kindness means ignorance. I ended the illusion that I was ever anyone's pawn. I closed the journal and placed it gently on the table beside me. The sun poured in through the new curtains, the same light I once thought I'd never see again. Jason was out in the yard, painting the old porch railing. He turned, saw me watching, and waved. I waved back, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled without holding back. Because justice wasn't loud, it was steady, it was patient, it was me, wide awake, hands calm, eyes clear. I survived, and now I lived.